Okay, this is the first video about JavaScript for the A2 IT CIE IT course. And the first video I'm just going to talk a little bit about why we bother and show you some examples of the kind of thing that we use JavaScript for. So essentially there's two main reasons that JavaScript's used. Number one was what it was traditionally used for when it was more of like nowadays, modern JavaScript, there's loads and loads and loads of it, and you can build whole servers, you can build complete applications with it. In the past, it was more of like a little toy for web developers, and in the early days of JavaScript, the only thing it was ever used for was adding interactivity and making sort of elements pop out, doing button controls and things like that. Latterly, it's used much, much more to dynamically change content in a website and to create websites based data-driven applications. But I'll give you an idea of what these things are. So I've created a website here. I will show you it in the full screen. It looks a little bit like this. There. It is a YouTube attempt called YouTube, cleverly named. And essentially there's some buttons on here that don't do anything. So that looks like a job for JavaScript. We want to make sure that we can like or dislike a video. And then I'm going to show you, we're going to look at the comments section because the way I've done this isn't great. And it would be a big problem for companies like YouTube if we didn't dynamically generate comments. And I'll show you what we mean by that in a second. But the first thing, and I'm not going to go too deep into the code today in this video anyway. I'll put some in, we'll look at it, but I'm not going to talk you through it all because we're going to introduce it later. I just want to give you an idea of the kind of control that JavaScript gives you. So presumably the first step is adding interactivity to your website. And these buttons look like a perfect place to put interactivity. You can make anything interactive. It doesn't just have to be buttons, but traditionally, classically, buttons are a good place to add scripts. So what I'm going to do in Dreamweaver, oh sorry, I forgot to delete this. There, we don't need that at the moment, and we don't need this at the moment. Sorry, I tested it earlier to make sure it worked. And that is our basic web page. It's all HTML. It's all stuff you should know. I don't think we use buttons in GCSE, but it's a simple tag to use. It's just button. One thing you will notice about this, if you did GCSE and you haven't touched HTML since, there's a lot of IDs. It's very, very important for JavaScript to make sure each element in your page can be identified. But we'll look at that in more detail later. So to add interactivity to a website, you're going to need a script. So you create a script tag, just like any other tag, and there you go. Anything in here will now be treated as JavaScript. You used to have to tell it you were using JavaScript, but nowadays HTML just defaults to JavaScript. If you want to use PHP or something else, you have to identify it, but in JavaScript, just the script tag is fine. So I've created two scripts here. I'll do the buttons ones first. So I'll copy this in, and I will paste this. So what you can see here, it looks terrifying, especially if you're not used to coding. Let me see, I've forgotten how to do full, oh there you go, code view, sorry. So the important bit here is there's two functions being added. There's an add a like function that will add a like, and there's add a dislike function that will add a dislike. When you click add a like, it disables the like button. It adds one to the number of likes, and then it updates the likes in your view. And the dislike button does the same. To show you this working, I'm just going to remove these lines because, oops, no, it's slash, isn't it? I'm going to comment out these lines. Don't worry what that means. It's just going to, basically, it's just going to ignore these. Because if we want to show you it working, we want to add lots and lots and lots of flags. The other thing you have to do is make sure your buttons carry out these functions. And we'll look at this again in more detail, so I'm not going to spend too long talking about it, but you can add an on-click event and tell it what to do. So add like. Oh. and the names match, add a like. You could probably just copy and paste it and add a like. And similarly, on click, and I want to add a dislike. So if I was to now save this and run my code, when I click on dislike, my dislikes go up. When I click on like, my likes go up. And that's the kind of interactivity you can add using JavaScript. And you can do it with loads and loads of different things. And we will do a whole example about incrementing variables with clicks in making a clicker. But for now, so that is interactivity to my web page. When I click these buttons, these values change. Straightforward enough. The other thing we need to know about is dynamically changing content. What that means is instead of hard coding or instead of typing all the HTML, we use JavaScript and a set of data to automatically add more and more and more elements to the page. So the example here, is the comment section we're going to use. Like on YouTube, on Facebook, on any of these sort of social media type apps you use, you'll notice there's loads and loads of comments. They change every day, they change all the time. If you had to have someone sit and code in every single comment, so we get a new one from Bob, and Bob thinks, meh, he's not too fazed by this video. And essentially, if we did this, YouTube, Facebook, any Instagram, any of these websites that allow you to add to comment would require a whole army of developers to sit and update the HTML as soon as they got a message, which would be a soul-destroyingly depressing job. So what we can do, and this code's a lot more complicated, so I'm not going to get bogged down with it. There's one thing I want to explain from it, importantly. But you can remove all these comments. And I have a script here. Oops, not there. I have a script I wrote earlier here called dynamic content that appears here. I'll talk you through some of this in a second. So if I put a new script at the bottom, I'll explain in a future video why these ones go at the bottom and the other ones go at the top. There is a reason for it. I'm not just jumping around like a mad person. So this creates a whole bunch of comments and then adds them to the array, adds them to the YouTube page. And you see I've got some comments here. So each one of these comments will be added dynamically to the page. So if I run this, if I save, and then File, Preview in Chrome, you'll see all these videos, all these comments get added. Then if more comments are submitted, if more users submit comments, they will appear in here. And using this information, this comments array would normally be pulled from some kind of database or some kind of API, but for our purposes we're going to hard code it in. But it's easier to add another comment. I can just take this format, copy and paste it, and we can put in Bob's comment. So Bob says meh. Save that. And when I refresh my web page, Bob's comment appears at the bottom. And it's much easier than having to deal with all the HTML and things. And that's the idea of dynamically adding content. Oops, that was OBS. You don't need to see that. The important bit here are these objects. And we will talk more about objects in the next video because they're very, very important in understanding JavaScript. Alright, so I wouldn't worry about this code. If you want, once you've seen all the videos, you can come back and look at this code. I will put a link to it on the channel and in Google Classroom and stuff like that. And you can have a look through it, but it won't make sense yet. But at the end, hopefully all of this will make sense and you'll be able to do these kind of things yourself.